Good evening, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight as we launch the Road to Independence, the virtual resource fair. Before we begin, I would like to share some housekeeping announcements. Closed captioning is available for this program. Please click on the CC button on your screen. We're also providing Spanish translation, and it is available. You can listen in Spanish by selecting your language preference at the bottom of your screen. Please use the Q&A function to submit any questions to our speakers. We will dedicate time towards the end of the program for questions. And finally, this event is being recorded. We will share the recording with all of you after the program. So thank you again for being with us tonight. My name is Rinat Kissin. I am the Inclusion and Belonging Specialist at the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington. For those of you who rely on image description, let me just describe and share that I am sitting in a chair. I am looking at the screen. There are some books behind me, and I am using headphones. This webinar tonight is one of 5 webinars that the Federation is hosting throughout the month of May in partnership with the Montgomery County Transition Work Group. We are extremely happy and delighted and thrilled to bring these great opportunities to our community, and we hope to see you join us at the rest of the webinars that are offered. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. At the Jewish Federation, we're also very proud to have created the 703 J Caring, the Jewish Community Support Line, in partnership with JESA and other local human service agencies. If you or someone you know needs support, please call this number 703-JCARING, and they will connect you with resources from across DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. We can also share the link and the phone number on the chat box. Tonight, as we focus on mental health, we are pleased to be joined by Haley Rizkala and Brendel Mitchell. Haley and Brendel are the youth engagement specialists for Taking Fight, Youth Move Maryland. They are 27 and 25 years old, respectively, and they use their lived experience with behavioral health challenges to offer support to others and promote positive changes in youth systems. Haley, Brendel, we are delighted that you're joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having us. Let me just share my screen and we will get this show on the road. All right, so we are here tonight to talk about self-care. And this has certainly become a buzzword this past year, but our aim tonight is to dive a little bit deeper into the meaning of self-care, all of the wonderful benefits that it has, and also all the different types of ways that you can incorporate it into your life in ways that you might not have expected. But before that, who are we? So Taking Flight is a young adult peer group that was created by Maryland Coalition of Families about 9 years ago. And I'll offer a few more details about Maryland Coalition of Families for those of you who haven't heard of it before. It is a statewide nonprofit that offers supports and services to caregivers of children with behavioral health challenges, as well as a loved one of someone who's experiencing substance use or problem gambling challenges. And a loved one can be a spouse or a sibling or a friend. And these supports and services include system navigation services. If you have a child that's involved in the Department of Juvenile Services, or if they have an IEP, our family peer support specialist can help walk you through the next steps in the process because they've been there. And they also offer peer support, as well as they work to empower these families to advocate for themselves in schools, doctors' offices, really wherever they feel that their voice isn't being heard. And so Maryland Coalition of Families created Taking Flight because they saw that there was really a great lack of services for this age group, transition age youth, which for our purposes is young adults ages 18 to 26. And this is really a population that experiences some pretty unique challenges. And if you throw mental health or substance use challenges in the mix, it can only be that much more difficult. So Brendel and I each have lived experience with behavioral health challenges experienced as we were teenagers growing into our adulthood. And we use those experiences to offer peer support. And our additional objectives are that we offer leadership development opportunities. For example, right now we're partnering with On Our Own of Maryland to offer the TAY Academy, which is a series of workshops going over a multitude of topics that have to do with peer support, leadership development, an anti-stigma message, self-advocacy, and so much more. And I believe there are slots available for the next cohort, and we would be more than happy to get that information to you after all of this. And we also do a lot of advocacy work. We sit on several statewide behavioral health committees to try to provide a youth voice in a lot of rooms where they're talking about youth, and oftentimes we're the youngest ones in there. And we also want to be a conduit for the young adults that come to our peer support groups that, if they have something that they want to have brought up in one of these committee meetings, we are happy to share the message. So it's a few details about MCF and Taking Flight as a whole. My name is Haley, and I'm 27 years old, and my lived experience involves a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder and depression, as well as being a caretaker of two parents who both have pretty severe substance use and mental health challenges. So I'll have Brenda introduce herself as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brendel Mitchell. I'm 25. I grew up in Montgomery County, born and raised, went to Richard Montgomery High School, if anyone out there is also from MoCo. I went to school at Towson and graduated in 2018. I have lived experience with depression, generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety, PTSD, and ADHD. As well as experiencing various traumas in my teenage and early 20 years. That's just a little bit about us and the lived experience that we bring to the table with our peer support groups and the work that we do.
And we can always offer more information about our peer support groups after this presentation. Feel free to email us. We'll put our emails in the chat during this presentation. All right, so the reason why we're all here, self-care. We all need it. When Brendel and I were putting this presentation together, this quote really resonated with us. Burnout doesn't happen overnight. It's a sliding scale that gets worse the more we continue to neglect ourselves. I know I couldn't agree more. We really see self-care as a preventative measure. It shouldn't be something that you only utilize when you're in crisis or when you really feel fully burnt out. And when we're talking about burnout, keep in mind that we're not just talking about at work. You can experience burnout in your relationships with family or friends, and even in the way that you treat yourself. So that's just something to keep in mind as we go through these slides. And just as a general overview, countless studies have supported that with continuous self-care, you're healthier, you feel more energized, you feel like you can manage other health issues. Like your mental health and your physical health are very tied. You can increase your productivity, you can be more focused, and my personal favorite, it helps to reduce stress. So we're gonna sort of go over some examples of this, as well as all the different things that come along with those examples. But first, why is this so difficult? You know, advertisements make self-care seem so easy, but if it were really that simple, we'd all already be doing it. So it's important to think that, to really reflect and think, if you want to create a self-care plan, you really should consider what has stopped you from doing this in the past. And there's a lot of really common barriers that we build up for ourselves. For example, one being, do you feel selfish for putting your needs first? And self-care is not selfish. It's very important to take care of yourself if you want to care for others. Is taking care of others easier for you? I can definitely put myself in that boat. Brendel can continue.
Yeah. Are you uncomfortable asking for what you need? I think this is a really big one for a lot of people. I think, studies have shown like humans just naturally want to do things for themselves. And a lot of people struggle with when you ask for help, you're essentially surrendering control to someone else. And a lot of people have difficulty with that, but it's so beneficial to us. People have this issue with it being asking for help makes you perceived as being needy or incompetent, or you don't want to feel shame or embarrassment for asking for help. When really the closest people to you and trusted people in your peer network are not going to make you feel uncomfortable for asking for help. They're going to be able to assist you in ways that you might not have even realized before. Do you feel like self-care is a luxury that not everyone can afford? The truth is that self-care is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's necessary for survival, it's necessary to be happy, it's necessary to have the best quality of life. So, you know, we all struggle with these barriers and that internal self-talk that wants to discourage us from asking or reaching out. But I think today is the day, at the very least, that we're going to stop that, right, Haley?
I hope so. And again, it really does feel like a luxury sometimes. I think self-care is a word that's been co-opted by beauty industries, and it's something that we're told if we buy this product, that's self-care, and that can very well be a part of your self-care plan. But we just want to make sure that we spread the word that it can be so much more than that, and it can be absolutely free, and you can fit it in wherever. So,
yeah, and if you're someone who has difficulty asking for anything, one suggestion I have is start by practicing it and starting small. If you're at the grocery store or at any store, maybe ask someone who works there, can they point you in the right direction? It can be that small. And maybe a way to look at it is the way to phrase it. You know, I'm having an issue with blank. Would you be able to, you know, sit down and talk with me and we can figure it out together? That way, maybe it doesn't feel like you're surrendering to someone else, or, you know, if you feel uncomfortable, maybe that's a better way to phrase it.
thank you. And so, what does real self-care look like? And the reason that we phrased it like that, real self-care, is that there are superficial forms of self-care that I think are probably the most widely known versions of this. So we're going to dive a bit deeper into the 7 types of self-care with some examples, as well as how to put them into practice. So emotional, essentially, this is activities that help you connect, process, or reflect on a full range of emotions, meaning caring for your emotional needs. And this is sort of a twofold process. It's important to identify what you're feeling and then nurture that feeling. And some examples of this is seeing a therapist or seeking peer support. If you can talk things out with someone who maybe has lived through something similar, or someone who can see it from a different perspective, it helps you to figure out what you're feeling, how you got there, and how to move forward while still acknowledging that feeling. Because, you know, we all, I'm sure, have learned the hard way that if you try to ignore a feeling, it'll end up manifesting somewhere different. And then it's even harder to figure out where it came from and self-soothe. And that's a big part of it, is knowing your triggers, knowing what can elicit a negative response, and becoming prepared. Put a tool in your toolkit. Maybe this is a self-soothing technique, such as putting it on paper. Maybe that's how you figure it out and really flesh out how you got there and how it's affecting your mood, how it's affecting next steps that you take. And this can be journaling, it can be art, music. I think this one really has a lot of options when it comes to just feeling your feelings, as simple as that sounds. But I think the real problem lays in not allowing yourself to do this. And we'll talk about that a bit more, with sort of roadblocks popping up and keeping you from continuously practicing self-care. And another thing that's an important example here is working to let go of grudges, anger, and resentment. Because I'm sure, as we all know, once you forgive someone, you're really doing a lot of good for yourself rather than that other person. And professional, financial. So I know that when I think of self-care, work isn't the first thing that I think of. I really focus on how I spend my time outside of work, how I'm winding down at the end of the day, how I'm spending my weekends. But self-care applies here. It's activities and actions that support you feeling balanced and more fulfilled in your career. Sometimes I start by asking myself, what can I do at work to keep me from becoming overwhelmed? Because I think, we live in a very fast-paced world where, if we're taking a day off, we feel like we're behind. If we feel like we're not focusing singularly on what we're doing at work, that we're not productive enough, that we're not doing our job well. But it's important to make sure that you take just small steps to make you a better and more productive worker. It seems counterintuitive to take time off and pause to be a better worker, but it definitely ends up working that way. And some examples here are setting reminders. And that's not a reminder for a meeting or a reminder to, remember to call someone back. It's a reminder to eat lunch and take breaks, take a screen break, stretch, because those things are, I don't even want to say just as important. They're more important because it's you and how you function and how healthy you feel and how good you feel. And sometimes we do need to set reminders. Sometimes we need to put it in our schedule just as we put in a meeting, but I would highly recommend giving that a try, blocking off the time on your calendar. Taking professional development classes. This, I know for me, makes me feel empowered in my job. When I feel like I'm taking steps that are within my control and improving on certain skills and learning new ones, really makes me look forward to sort of showing off what I've learned at work. And again, like I mentioned, take all of your vacation days. I think, as Brenda was saying earlier, in the US especially, we really are so driven to keep up at work, to not be the weakest link, all these things. But using all of your vacation days, just in the long term, will keep you at your job longer. It helps prevent that burnout. It helps make you happier. And I think that's like really at the root of self-care, is making sure you are feeling supported and comfortable. Not answering calls after the workday is over, very important. Sticking to your boundaries. Boundaries is really big with self-care. And this last example, putting your tasks on a calendar and making an effort to maintain and improve your organization skills. Because as we were saying earlier, self-care can be work sometimes, but the challenge is definitely worth the results. And I think one final thing I'll say about this is that your availability and your free time are two completely different things. You can be available at a certain time of the day. Let's say one of your meetings get canceled. I don't know. Just because you're available doesn't mean you're free for someone else to schedule something then. Take the time for yourself and don't feel bad about it. I think that can be an incredibly empowering experience as well.
I am so glad you said that. That has become one of my newest favorite quotes. And I also tell people, like, you earned your vacation days. You worked for them. You deserve them. And if you don't take them, they go to waste, essentially. No one else gets to benefit from them. So I'll continue this. So practical self-care. So tasks that you complete that fulfill core aspects of your life in order to prevent future stressful situations. I know that I struggle with this, especially as someone who deals with ADHD, but me making that effort to, work on this is only benefiting me in my life. So some examples of this: accepting help instead of considering it a sign of weakness or failure. I can't tell you how many people I know who just, they're so uncomfortable accepting help or asking for it, mainly because they've just become so accustomed to doing everything by themselves, for themselves, and for others. But really, why don't you accept some help sometimes? That'll make your life easier. That's how it works. We're all in this together. And I think this is a nice reminder of that. Just accept some help sometimes, especially if it's being directly offered to you. That's a great way of practicing accepting help. If someone offers it, accept it. Getting organized. This can be challenging for a lot of people, but it's so beneficial. A couple months ago, I bought a huge calendar And at the end of every month, I've started to fill it out so I can visually just see everything that I have going on. And that's helped me tremendously. I know most of us use like Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, Outlook Calendar, all the calendars that you have on your phone. But that's helpful for me. But I need that. I need that huge in my face visual. That is so helpful. Not skipping things that are good for you in favor of something taxing. Yeah, use your available time to do something that makes you feel good, that makes you just feel lighter and better. For example, maybe you have some free time, some unexpected free time. Maybe instead of doing an errand or a chore that you could just wait, that could wait, why don't you relax, That's like, I think a lot of people don't allow themselves to relax sometimes. And it seems like that would be something so easy to do. But yeah, sometimes we have to put a little more effort into relaxing, even though it sounds so backwards. This one I think is hard for everyone. Viewing mistakes as an opportunity to learn and grow rather than a failure. I think we all need to realize that when we view our mistakes as an opportunity to learn and grow, that takes so much pressure off of us and allows us to talk to ourselves in a more compassionate, kind way. We are only human. We are only human. And being human means being imperfectly or perfectly imperfect. You're no matter how much you grow and learn and heal and evolve, like your entire life, you're going to make mistakes. That's what life is about. So maybe trying to work on making that mental perspective shift, maybe that could help a lot. I know it has for me personally. If you want to keep going, Haley. Physical. I think a lot of people are constantly told, oh, like go get some exercise, you'll feel better. Sure, but that's in conjunction with all of these other things we're talking about. Just like how physical health is one part of self-care, so are all of these others. So it's, we all know that getting that exercise in every day is gonna, give you the best chance at being physically healthy, but it helps your mental health too, your overall health in general. I know Haley loves to take her walks on her lunch breaks. I love walking my dog, not all the time because I'm not the biggest walker, but it's nice. It's a nice break in the middle of the day or even at the end of the day. Walking is scientifically proven to relieve anxiety. So why not give it a try? Having a nighttime routine. So having a morning routine. So having a morning routine and nighttime routine. I struggle with routine, but that morning and that nighttime, that's a lot more in our control. And it doesn't have to be super complicated. It can be like 3 things you regularly do before you go to bed. And one of those 3 things could be brushing your teeth, just do something you do every single day that's familiar to you, that will bring you comfort. Staying hydrated, exercising. So I believe if you get about 23 minutes, I believe it's 23 minutes of rigorous exercise a day, that actually improves your brain functioning by like exponentially. And I actually recently just learned that. So exercising, I personally have been trying to do more of that, especially now that it's nicer outside. And I know people can be limited by finances, but you can exercise for free. You can exercise for free in only 20 minutes a day. If you can even squeeze that in, try your best. It'll only benefit you. Next slide, Haley. Mental. So these are activities that stimulate your mind or your intellect, and that will essentially help you declutter your mind also. So reading a nice book, listening to a book, always a great suggestion. Learning more about a subject that genuinely interests you. I have friends who will get lost for hours on like Reddit or who are tubers and will just be on YouTube, just going down the rabbit hole, exploring some random subject. that's fun to do. It's a healthy way to surf, if you will, rather than just scrolling aimlessly, mindlessly on social media. Journaling, one of my favorites. Journaling, I think some people think a little too deeply into it. You can start with anything that's just on your mind. It doesn't have to be related to anything. Just start writing. It's amazing how therapeutic it can be, and where your thoughts take you on the paper. It's really beneficial to a lot of people, and it's something you can do for what, 10 minutes. I know some people that they'll start their day and they'll do 10 minutes of writing every morning, journaling before bed, journaling when you're not feeling really well, and working through your issues with yourself. Those are just some examples of how you can use journaling. And this one is related to, a lot of these actually are related to setting boundaries, but also accountability. So learning your triggers, learning what is going to set you off so you can better take care of yourself in those moments or see it coming. And also it'll positively impact your personal and social relationships as well. So this is kind of a part of self-care that we talk about, where it's not necessarily super luxurious, and it might feel like some work, but all of it is just to benefit you in the end. And it definitely will. Next slide. So social self-care. So this is actually interesting because it can look like you making effort to be more social and making time to have that social time, but it can also look like you saying no, and you not agreeing to do everything with everyone. And if you are burnt out, or you just need time to just be with yourself, like, don't feel bad about that. Your friends, your people in your life, like the ones who care about you genuinely, will understand that. So for those who struggle to maybe make that socialization a priority, because we are humans, we are social beings, we do need that. Our social bonds are so important to us. So maybe just like, hey, let's go get lunch this weekend, or hey, do you have any time this week? And we can FaceTime and on our lunch break, or just making the effort. And don't put too much pressure on yourself either. Like, it starts with the effort. Just starts with the effort. Like I said, say no if you don't have the time or energy. If you had plans all day on Friday night and you had plans with people Saturday, maybe it's okay to not do anything with anyone on Sunday. Balance. That's so important. Making time to call your loved ones, checking in with them. I know I always feel better after talking to my grandparents, and I need to be calling them more often because, but anyways, I feel like this is also a hard one. Releasing the urge to please everyone all the time. That's a hard one. But the truth is that we have to accept that we just can't. Please everyone all the time. And we definitely shouldn't be doing for others at a sacrifice to ourselves. That's not okay. And we should be treating ourselves better than that. Like you can't Haley, what's that saying? You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
Is that how it goes? Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup. And spending time with yourself, spending quality time with yourself. I'm typically a person who I crave to be around my loved ones. And sometimes I get a little weird when I'm just like alone. I'm like, what do I do with myself? But then I have those other times where I'm like, I literally can't be around anyone because it's just not good for me. I don't feel like I'm capable of doing that. So learning to recognize those times where you need yourself more than anyone, and to really nourish that relationship with yourself. I think that's something we have to make a little more effort to do. We often give more compassion to other people than we do ourselves. I know I mentioned that before, but it's also important to spend time with yourself, but enjoy spending time with yourself. And if you're not super comfortable with yourself yet, maybe that's something to work on, little by little. I know I've had to work on that over the years also. Next slide, please. Spiritual. So this is just activities that nurture your spirit, allows you to think bigger than yourself, things that allow you to feel peaceful. It doesn't have to be religious, although for some it is. So for the examples that we've listed, these are something that literally anybody can do. Meditation or working on calming your mind. 20 minutes can be a lot to start with, but I think 5 to 10 minutes, if you're new to meditation, or it's a little uncomfortable right now, guided meditations, I personally love. Like I mentioned before, that ADHD brain can be a lot sometimes, to calm down. Spending time in nature, dedicating time for self-reflection. You can do self-reflection, whether you're just sitting and you're journaling, meditating. It's nice to work on, to reflect, to be aware, but we're not gonna harp on anything. We don't wanna get stuck. Unplugging from social media, news, the world. That's something, one of my biggest recommendations for people. Even if you do like an hour any given day, it can do a lot for you. It can really do a lot for you. I know that I will take social media breaks sometimes, and I just won't be on there for whether it's a few days, a week, a month, whatever you need. And you'll be surprised if you've never done it before. You'll be surprised how great you'll feel and how peaceful. Practicing gratitude. I think, especially in the last year, it's been easy at times to like lose hope and to forget what all we do have. So practicing gratitude, making a gratitude list. Sometimes when I'm feeling really down, I'll literally just make a list of every single thing that I'm grateful for, everything that I am blessed to be, blessed to have, literally anything. Like, I am grateful that I have this water bottle. It's actually my favorite water bottle. It was one of the best gifts I've ever gotten. That's so small, but when you just spend some time thinking about all these great things you have, it lifts your spirits, makes you feel better. And then the more you acknowledge everything you're grateful for, the more likely it is that you'll continue to get these great things. Setting intentions. Setting intentions is a positive way to assist and facilitate some goals you may have. So I wanted to go to grad school. So I just simply at the beginning of the year, I was like, I am going to go to grad school. And, obviously you have to do certain things to get there. But I, in the last couple of weeks, got accepted to a master's program starting this fall. So it's like, you can set a goal, but setting an intention kind of takes that pressure off of you. It's like, I just intend for this to happen. It's going to happen. Instead of, I need this to happen. If this doesn't happen, like I'm a bad person or I'm a failure. No, it's simply, I claim this. This is what I want. And that's it. And that's something that is about the law of attraction, which simply just says the more energy you put into a thought, the more likely it is to come true, whether that's a negative or positive. And that's more of like a personal belief thing. Not everyone believes in that or wants to practice that. Totally fine. We just thought we would throw it out there as an example. Next slide. And Haley, do you want to pick this one up while I get that checklist ready?
Yes, thank you so much. So what we've really been getting at this entire time is that a daily practice is really going to be the most effective. You don't want to try to, adopt some self-care skills and strategies that you prefer and then only use them when you're feeling completely burnt out, because then they won't even be as effective. So I think really what we want is for you to explore all these different parts of your life and see if you could fit in self-care, maybe one piece of self-care within each of those facets, or maybe there's a place where you really feel that you do have more energy that you can devote to self-care, because really wherever you can get it in, it's going to be more beneficial than if you didn't put that work in. So I know for us, we each have a personal self-care routine, and these things change. Your needs are different at different times in your life. So we just really hope that at some point during this, and of course, we're happy to take questions, or we're happy to email with you after this. If you could find a piece, even just one piece of self-care from some of the things that we've talked about today, it's a step in the right direction. And it'll help in the long run. This is really a long-term sort of goal that you have to work with when it comes to self-care. Although in the short term, it can be really beneficial as well. So let's see if I think Brenda has
yeah, so hopefully everyone can see it. If not, it will be getting sent to everyone after, but it's a little checklist that I made. And it's just can be used as an example of, okay, here's some, let me choose 3 things off this list that I'm going to commit to doing today for myself. And it's just an example, but that's a way you can start forming your own self-care routine. Maybe sit there with yourself and with, in regards to the 7 categories you just mentioned, and maybe like Haley said, pick one thing out of every category, and not that you have to do them right away, but maybe one thing that you're like, okay, I can do this for myself. And that's where you can start from there. But it really is important to try to practice self-care every single day, because one of the biggest takeaways is that we don't want self-care to be in response to a crisis or you crashing and burning. We want you to practice self-care every day, so maybe we can decrease the amount of crises or burnouts or just breakdowns.
And something that we're really passionate about is spreading awareness that mental health is just as important as physical health. And if you are waking up and brushing your teeth and eating breakfast and doing all those things that are good for your physical body, it should be just as important to do something for your mental health, because that's really what helps you, get through the day and the next day after that and after that. And something that we've learned over time is that you're not going to be perfect right away. You might pick out, oh, this self-care technique looks perfect for me. I can fit that into my daily life. And it works for a week, and then you sort of forget to do it. And then you kind of feel like, oh, maybe that one isn't right for me. But the thing is, you're not always going to be successful in it. And sometimes you don't need that additional care. But when you make sure to pick yourself up and continue trying, even if you've gone a week, 2 weeks, a month, and you haven't journaled, you haven't done yoga, you haven't done what you really think provides you with that energy source, keep trying. I mean, if you just give up, then what's that going to do? Especially if you've already reaped some benefits from the self-care.
Definitely. It's the long game. But like we keep saying, it's that compassion towards yourself is so important. And like Haley said, if you can't get to self-care every single day, or, you're doing all these great things and then you kind of fell off for a while, part of self-care is lending that compassion to yourself. Don't beat yourself up for that. Please do not beat yourself up for that. The important thing is trying. And as long as you keep trying, you can't fail, just try to look at it like that. So we're not going to beat ourselves up if we can't, do self-care perfect, whatever that means. I don't know what that means. But it's the effort that means more than anything. And a little bit every day, self-care one day. Yeah, self-care one day can look so different than the next day. One day self-care for me can be holding myself accountable for attending everything that I said I would and the commitments. And self-care the other day can look like me canceling everything I had planned and staying in bed. So you have to, it's an ongoing thing. And just remember, it looks different for everybody. And it looks different on different days, even for you who has a routine already established. So just some things to keep in mind also.
And as Brendel mentioned, you did drop a checklist in the chat if you're interested in creating your own or maybe going off of that one. I know I'm a very visual person, so it helps for me to have reminders hanging up in my house. And then let's see, Brendel, if you want to go over some of these resources, and we also will drop a link in the chat of additional apps that really help with this, help with you keeping yourself accountable, help you with inspirational messages, and just helping you sort of stay on track. We'll drop that list in the chat as well.
So really quickly, these are just a few examples of some resources that I pulled, but Insight Timer that Haley brought to my attention, they have thousands of guided meditations, and they range from 5 minutes to like an hour or over an hour, different types of voices. They're diverse. It's an awesome app. And you can also just go on their website also from your laptop. It's not app required. The Bullet Method Journal. One of our peers actually recommended this book to us during one of our weekly meetups that we host. And it's about intentional living. You basically are learning about this organizing system that helps you track your past, order the present, and design your future. And I know for me personally, organizing my thoughts is hard enough, like organizing my life. Whew. So this book, I actually just got it. So I'm looking forward to this and seeing what that brings me. And then some places you can go to. So Brookside Gardens and Rawlings Conservatory. These are some nice like outdoors, some nature scenery. Just that's a relaxing activity to do. It can be in nature. You can make it a mindful activity also. Sorry, there should have been a comma there. Apologies, between I can't speak today. Before ClassPass, I apologize. So ClassPass, if you haven't heard of it, it's an app that you can download, and you pay like a monthly fee, and you are offered a bunch of exercise classes near you, whether it's like CrossFit or yoga, hot yoga, Pilates, bar. You don't have to have a membership. You literally just have this ClassPass, and you can do a certain number of classes per week / per month. And these two on the bottom are also apps. This one, Care Of, helps you create and stick to a personalized health plan with vitamins, protein, and more. So that's getting at your nutrition, physical health, but also, physical health impacts mental health. Lumosity. So this is like a brain training app that can help you do exercises to help create and stick to habits. And then just learning about how you think, why you think this way, why you react this way. Knowledge is power. And I am going to now put this link in where I got some of these resources from, and they have a few dozen suggestions of other apps if you all wanted to explore that also.
And we do hope that you were able to pick out maybe one or two of these self-care practices that you might be able to incorporate. And if you already have, that's incredible. We really encourage you to keep on trucking with that. And peer support is always there to help you stay accountable, to help empower you to continue. I think that's one of the great things that we've learned in our weekly support groups that we host, is that we are there to keep each other on track and to inspire each other to, make solid, responsible choices for ourselves. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and I think we'll start the Q&A session.
Well, thank you so much, first of all. We do have couple of minutes for some questions that we received now, and also we have some questions that we have received from people who signed up. So the first question that I wanted to ask is, you started talking about that it's the peer support. If you can elaborate on the peer support and just give us some more information about that, and also if there's maybe share a website or information on how to be part of this.
Of course, yeah. Brendel will put our website as well as our social media accounts and our emails in the chat. So peer support is very simple. It's a simple concept, but I think it is a really hard sell sometimes when we're describing it to people, because it truly is just talking with other young adults, in our case, that have similar experience as you do. So you feel less alone in your experience, and you feel like, you have someone who's been there and they can share with you what has helped them along the way, what has maybe hurt them along the way, and you can work together to lift each other up. So we meet every week at Thursdays at 5 o'clock. It's, as I said earlier, transition age youth, ages 18 to 26. And I think, honestly, what we've learned throughout this year is that most young people have experienced some form of behavioral health challenge over the course of the pandemic. Even if you don't have a diagnosis, you don't need one. If you just need some additional support from young people, maybe outside of a clinical setting, that has been really great for some of these young people, because a lot of them are in and out of appointments all day. They have like therapists, they have their doctors. If they have any other accommodations in school, it all is a very controlled environment. And when they're talking with us, it's very informal. We're not licensed clinicians. Our experience, what qualifies us for the job, is that we have experience in the same sorts of things. So Brendel, if you want to add anything to that.
Oh, I was not paying attention because I'm getting these links
No
in the
worries.
chat.
And we also, through our association with Maryland Coalition of Families, we are able to connect young people with resources that may be able to help them, because we have family peer support specialists in all the different regions of Maryland. So we can help connect them with local resources that our coworkers can vouch for.
Thank you. So you mentioned the COVID, and one of the questions that we have received is about anxiety and COVID. Can you talk a little bit about that and how self-care helped overcome or have less struggles with anxiety due to the situation we've been in the last year and a half?
Yeah, I was actually just reading a study that was showing that young people, I think it was in the study, ages like 16 to 24, have experienced the highest levels of anxiety and depression throughout this past year. And I think that is largely due to the fact that a lot of them are on their own for the first time. This is the point in our lives where we're becoming more independent. Maybe you're moving in on your own, or you're supporting yourself. And this year has really made that all the more difficult, especially when you're emerging into adulthood. And something that we've learned over the past year through having our support groups over Zoom is that, at first we structured them as very educational. We had an agenda, we had a theme, we had like everything planned out. And really we noticed that people just wanted to log on and talk. They really just needed to feel less isolated. They wanted to feel connectedness. And luckily we've been able to, provide that over Zoom for the time being. But Brendel, if you want to go over how self-care sort of plays into that.
Yeah, so specifically with our meetups, with our peer network, we will have meetups that are geared towards each part of what self-care is. So for example, we have a couple meetups where we learn about boundaries, the importance of setting boundaries, and how lacking boundaries with yourself and with others can hurt you. That's a form of self-care, having boundaries. So that's just an example, but we've also done things like we did a paint night recently, which was very therapeutic. And I am not an artist. I wish I had those wonderful talents, but I actually created something really that I can be proud of. And it was like enjoyable to do it. And we just did that together. But also, it's about creating that self-care plan. So sharing what works for each other is nice, and talking about it and having that conversation. But ultimately, we can't tell someone you should do this for self-care. It's that self-discovery part is very important. So to answer that shortly, we work together. We have been working together to figure out what can we try that we haven't tried that will help us. What have we been doing but not actively acknowledging that's helping us, and just having that conversation. And that conversation can start with one of your best friends, with your parents, with a sibling, with just anyone who's close to you, that knows you, and maybe they can help. But I think it's personal, but it helps to talk to someone about it for sure. And also maybe try some of these tips that we suggested. I know personally, I have tried a couple things that I haven't tried before. Prioritizing getting fresh air every single day, even in the winter. That was important. I didn't know how much that helped me before, especially when we were in the thick of the quarantine. Getting that fresh air and feeling some semblance of normalcy for even just a moment was really helpful. So I hope that helped a little
Yeah,
bit.
and I think even to add to that, throughout our peer support meetups, having sort of a buddy system involved, having someone to hold you accountable, because we can know that something is good for us, and that's different than actually practicing it regularly. So we offer that to each other. Like, do you want me to text you next week and check in to see if you did this? Will you text me? And I think that I know for me has been really helpful, and it's been also very well received by a lot of people that come to our support groups.
Yeah, and sometimes when I'm having a bad day, that'll be enough of a reminder, like, hey, let me check on my people. Let me make sure they're okay. And that's kind of a way to make it full circle. Like, I want to be checked on, but let me check on other people also. And I think that's something that we all should kind of adapt, to really have that community. Like, we really have to lean on each other more than ever. Even though, we have the vaccine coming out, we're still, in this, so let's try to lean on each other as best as we can.
Which leads me to, I think we have room for one more question, but so actually it's 1.5 questions. One question was, how can someone join the meetups? But then following to what you said with vaccine and getting back to routine. So the question of, now that we are preparing to go back to what we knew before, there's a lot of anxiety with that, meaning now being in person. So if you can touch on this and how self-care can help with that.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say, do not rush yourself. Do not push yourself out too much outside of your comfort zone. This is a sensitive thing. Be compassionate with yourself. Take your time getting comfortable with being in person again if you have anxiety about that. If the anxieties are related to maybe, COVID still exists, I'm nervous about that, even though X, Y, and Z. Nervous about being physically close to people. That's a little more challenging, right? So you are free to just remember, you're allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to say, I'm not comfortable going to this right now. I'm not there yet. Be honest with yourself. If you're not there, that's okay. We just, the last year has completely changed all of our lives. If you're not there yet, if you're not ready, that's okay. But let's start communicating that, so maybe we can find some solutions. I know people are going back to school and there's social events. That's a little more difficult, so how can we advocate in a classroom setting, for example? That's something that you can talk to Haley and I more about one-on-one. But I personally think advocacy, advocate for yourself, the boundaries. If you're not comfortable, please don't force yourself to do something. That's my biggest piece of advice. But honestly, being anxious is so valid, and I'm not going to tell anyone to not be anxious. You know, we have to validate those feelings, and then it's a day by day thing. I can't offer so many suggestions right now other than we're in this together. We'll take it day by day. Don't pressure yourself to do something just because everyone else is doing it. Don't pressure yourself to do something that you're not comfortable doing. Be compassionate with yourself, communicate your needs. And that's my 2 cents. So what do you think, Haley?
I completely agree. I think when it comes to, I know I'm someone who has a lot of anxieties coming off of this past year because I already had social anxiety last year and the year before. But I think if you communicate your needs to the people that you're spending time with, that's the first step and sometimes the only step you need to make. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a longer conversation. You don't need to give them your rationale. The fact that you said no is completely valid. And I think if you don't do that, and then, someone behaves in a way that you're offended by, or that, you can't really hold them accountable because you didn't express to them that their actions would impact you negatively. So I agree. I would say first determine what you feel comfortable with sort of on your own. And then if that doesn't align with your friends, have a conversation. And that's something else that we talk about at our meetups is how to have sort of hard conversations with friends and families. So our information is in the chat. It's our website, our social media accounts, and always you can email us. I'll put my email in the chat again, and I can, send you the flyers that we have for these events and any other additional information that you need. We are, we're so happy with this program and how far we've come over the past year. And we'd love to include anyone and everyone who wants to be a part of it.
We love new faces.
Well, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for this. No,
Thank you for having us.
for spending the night with us and just giving us some tips about self-care, because I think we are busy caring for others, and we forget about us. But if we don't treat ourselves, we cannot treat others. So I think this is something that we all need to do better. And thanks to you and your advice and your tips, I think we are going to start doing this. So thank you again so much for joining us tonight. And we will share the information with everyone who attended. And again, thank you. Before I end this session, I just wanted to remind everyone that we are offering 4 more webinars throughout the month of May. In fact, on Wednesday is the second webinar that is hosted by the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Administration. It's the DDA. And they will explain who is eligible for DDA, the benefits, the services, and the waivers. So please make sure that you register. We will put on the chat the link to register if you haven't done so. And there are 3 more webinars that are offered for you, which we will share on the chat as well. And just make sure that you join us for the rest of the Road to Independence resource fair. And please, if you have a moment, just take a look at the survey that we will send you tomorrow, and just fill it out and just help us make sure that we are we want to make sure that you are that you learned, and we just want to make sure that we are able to provide resources and information that is helpful and beneficial for everyone. So with that, we would like to conclude this evening. And again, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the participants. I want to thank our captioners tonight, both the English and Spanish, and of course, our wonderful presenters, Brendel and Haley, and just wish you a good night, and hope to see you soon. Take care and good night.